Hello everyone, welcome to Lesson Board. Now in this video I am going to help all of you understand how to solve questions based on comparisons. Now comparisons is a chapter which is a part of the writing section on the SAT or the English section on the ACT. Okay, so let's get going. Okay, now let's read this. Let's read this question. Such breeding was intended to produce certain physical qualities in the domesticated finches, but it also had an unintended consequence: increased song complexity in the Bengalese finch relative to the white-rumped munia. All right, so we have four options. First one being no change. When B says when compared with those of the white-rumped munia, when compared with the white-rumped munia, or option D says relative to that of the white-rumped munia. Okay, now before we do this question, I would like to share a couple of tips with all of you and strategies which we can use to answer these types of questions. Okay, so let's have a look at them. Now, first, remember, only comparable or similar quantities must be compared, which means that you can only compare apples to apples or oranges to oranges. You cannot compare apples to oranges. Number two, check for incomplete or illogical comparisons. Okay, what are these? We'll just have a look. And number three, check for singular or plural comparisons, that of versus those of. So let's quickly understand what points 2 and 3 actually mean. Okay, so have a look at this sentence. This says, this player is better than any player on the team. Now, what exactly is this? Is this sentence right or is this wrong? It says this player is better than any player on the team. Doesn't it mean that you're comparing this player to himself in a way because he is also one of the players on the team? Our intention is to compare this player to the other players on the team. Okay, so this is an example of incomplete comparisons. Now, in order to correct this, we would write this player is better than any other player on the team. Okay, I hope this is clear. All right, so what about this sentence? It says, COVID crisis in India is worse than any other country in the world. Really? Is that even possible? How can you compare COVID crisis in India to any other country in the world? Now, this is a perfect example of illogical comparison. We are comparing COVID crisis in India to any other country. And that is what I call comparing apples to oranges. We need to compare COVID crisis in India to COVID crisis in other countries. So how do I correct that? I say COVID crisis in India is worse than that in any other country in the world. And yes, this corrects the problem of illogical comparison. Now I am comparing COVID crisis in India to COVID crisis in any other country in the world. And why did I use that in? Because that is used for singular comparisons and COVID crisis by itself is a singular term. So I would use that. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Now, let's have a look at a similar example. Cherries grown in Jackson's farm are tastier than Sean's farm. Okay, isn't that ridiculous? How can you compare cherries to Sean's farm? So again, this is a perfect example of illogical comparisons. We are comparing apples to oranges, which we cannot do. We need to compare cherries grown in Jackson's farm to the cherries grown in Sean's farm and not just Sean's farm. So we are going to correct this by writing cherries grown in Jackson's farm are tastier than those of Sean's farm. Now in this sentence, we are using those of. Why? Because we are referring to cherries, which is a plural noun. In the previous example, We were referring to COVID crisis, which was singular, and that is why we use that of. Uh, in this one, cherries is plural, so we use those of. I hope this is clear. Now, we're going to revisit the question and try to answer it. So at this point, I would request all of you to pause the video over here and try to do this on your own. Okay, so let's do this. The sentence reads as, so I'll read from increased song complexity. It says increased song complexity in the Bengali finch relative to the white-rumped munia. Now, if you would notice, as per option A, which is no change, we are comparing the song complexity in the Bengali finch to the white-rumped munia. Whereas the intention is to compare the song complexity in Bengali finch to the song complexity in the white-rumped munia. So it cannot be option A because that is an illogical comparison. Option B says when compared with those of. Increased song complexity in the Bengali finch when compared with those of the white-rumped munia. Well, as correct as it may seem, it is not so. Why? Because we are using those of in option B to refer to something that is singular. Increased song complexity. Song complexity is singular. So we cannot use those of, which can help us to eliminate B as well. Let's have a look at option C, when compared with. So increased song complexity in the Bengali finch when compared with the white-rumped munia. Same problem as that of option A. So illogical comparison, we are comparing song complexity in the Bengali finch to the white-rumped munia, which is absolutely wrong. And thus we are left with only option D, which is relative to that of. So let's plug in that and check. Increased song complexity in the Bengali finch relative to that of the white-rumped munia. Well, bingo, that's what we are wanting to have because increased song complexity is singular and we want to compare increased song complexity in the Bengali finch to increased song complexity in the white-rumped munia. And option D gives that to us in the best possible manner. Relative or increased song complexity in the Bengali finch relative to that of the white-rumped munia. Well, so I hope all of you could understand this, and next time when you come across a similar question, I hope you shall be able to answer it perfectly. Okay, so thank you for watching the video. You should join our live online classes for an even better learning experience. Hope to see you there. Bye-bye.